Let technology to innovate your safety. And that's an interesting one, because I think, and before we talk about the pushing into innovation, what we see happen, and you've seen this before, we've all seen this, is you roll out your program, you get adoption, and all that stuff you talked about and you dug into in finding the perfect solution, or all the things you want to do in the future with your program, and that brainstorm you had with your software provider and the true partner falls on the wayside, and you start just making this status quo. You have 60% of your system you bought is still not being used, and what happens is you settle in. And so one of the things that we like to talk about is don't settle in. Let yourself get immersed. Investigate, learn. Maybe Blair, you or Greg, whoever wants to jump in, talk a little bit about what you've seen, like companies settling in. How do they break through that? How do they get to the next level and don't end up where they were when they started?
It's one thing if you're going from one software to another, but if you're going from paper to digital, you kind of have to like rewire your brain to some degree, right? In the paper world, everything you do is on paper, right? You're writing it on a piece of paper, but it's not really doing much good if it doesn't leave that piece of paper and translate into real action, right?
Right.
So in the digital world, there are a lot of elements of a safety program that they don't live in the form anymore. So like I'll use like a corrective action, which is obviously incredibly important, right? You can write a corrective action onto a paper form, but if I don't go out to you and say, hey, go do this,
or text it,
it's not doing anyone any good, right?
Yeah.
So when you think about digital safety, a corrective action is its own kind of object. It doesn't live in a form; it lives in the system,
right?
And it gets sent to people. It's interactive, and it allows you to kind of close the loop on it much more easily, rather than again just writing it on a piece of paper, right? So changing your kind of mindset and just how you think about safety is key.
It's so true. I mean, there's so many things that I think you might start out going digital or moving to another platform or out of a hybrid model. Simply because you wanted to just get out of digital forms or paper forms, But then you start to learn as you evolve and learn more about the platform, to Blair's point, that there's so many other aspects that you could take on, right? Like you could use a report and set up custom notifications as well. So there's just so much there. And yeah, you want to ensure that you're not standing still, because safety certainly isn't. Yeah,
that's interesting. And what I think is important is to create that push and pull effect with the software that you choose. I mean, at the end of the day, if you're doing it the right way, you're gonna replicate what you're doing, and then you're gonna start using the stuff within the system. But immediately, you're gonna start looking at areas where it can improve. And when you start talking to your customer success manager, whatever business you're working with, you want to collaborate and innovate with them, and you're going to push them into innovation. And then all of a sudden, it's like an elastic band. They're going to pull you, and then you're going to push them, and they're going to pull you. And it's this relationship that really can innovate and push safety to the next level. And one of the things that I think, and you touched on it a little bit there, both of you, is how do we use it to start fighting things that we've always struggled with, like complacency. For me, complacency is a big topic because we all know complacency kills. I mean, I've told both of you stories about, and I think everyone in our company is like, I just still don't understand how it's possible, but how working in high-rise construction, I personally have been on the edge of the building, looking down the side, measuring something, doing whatever I was doing, and realizing that I of course had my harness on, but I was actually clipped off to myself. And the reason is, and I know you're like, why are you even talking about this? You can't tell people that, but it's true, and we have to talk about this. And the thing is that I was not scared anymore of heights, and I was back and forth over the guardrail, tying off, tying back on, and this one time, maybe I was paying attention to something different, whatever it may be, and I was hooked onto myself. And that is the reality. This stuff happens, and that's a big extreme, but it can happen with working on a 5-foot step ladder, and all of the safety officers and people in the room know this stuff happens day in and day out. And so what we've found a lot is when you're doing paper forms or digital forms or hybrid of both, forms are designed, yes, to protect your business, but they're also the core of what we're doing in safety. Everything we're doing is to protect the worker, allow them to be safer, and those forms are actually designed to break up complacency. And what we've seen is that those forms can actually start causing the same complacency because it's the same form they've done for 2 years or a year, and they can close their eyes and what we call pencil whip it. And so tell me, both of you, I know you both have stories.
Yeah.
How have you seen companies out there, sorry, there's a fly flying around my head. How have you seen them innovate and do unique things with their forms to keep that breakup?
Well, I think, Gabe, one of the biggest concerns for a company when they're looking to go digital is that, right? They're afraid of the workers just pencil whipping the forms and, it being too automatic. But like you said, there are a lot of creative ways where you can actually keep it even more interactive than just a static paper form. So, for example, you could hyperlink within the form, maybe a link to some policies online or something that you've uploaded into Salus or even a live video or recorded video. So just lots of options in how you can think about actually making it more interactive than it's ever been before.
Yeah, I think, complacency is something we deal with all the time, right? Right. People are always trying to cut corners, right? They don't want to fill out the forms. They want to get done as fast as possible. And, of course, we don't want to, promote that sort of thing, but there are a lot of things that we can do to make things easier for them. You don't buy software to make your life more difficult. You buy it to make your life easier. So things like things Greg mentioned, but also things like building logic into a form.
Right.
You think about like a hazard assessment. We don't want to just fill out the form for you, but we can use certain tools to kind of guide the user down a path that just makes the process of filling out a form more streamlined, easier. They don't have to think quite as much, but they still have to kind of put that thought in. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So make it easier for them without promoting complacency, essentially.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because, like you said, Blair, I think you're right, but it's also dangerous because, yes, you want to make it more manageable and easier, but you also don't want it to be so easy that you're just opening a form, hitting yes, move to the next thing, because there's a purpose in which that's there. And the goal is, again, they're supposed to stop, think, identify. And when you mentioned a video, I remember a customer or a company of ours that we were working with. I love the way that they created their forms. They actually had a 1 or 30-second video at the top of, I think it was their hazard assessment that they changed every month. And it was just on ladder safety. It was a mandatory video. To finish the form, they had to watch it. And they also another company would just switch the order of things or change the wording and the verbiage. And it just keeps it was still easier to do, but it kept them engaged with what their surrounding environment and things that they were noticing happening in their business. And I think that's really cool. And I think it's a really important thing to start thinking outside the box. And when you find that software that's going to pull it all together, one of the things that I think is the coolest part about this, and I identify this with a lot because when I, again, talk about what safety was before that 7-year mark for my business, I found safety officers were in the field a lot. They were building a culture, they were mentoring, they were there. And over the last 7 years, it feels like a lot more has been pushed into the office, more of that administrative burden. And I feel like when you find that software and things start to become manageable again, you really allow them to start getting back in the field and being able to do what they were trained to do. You've talked to lots of safety officers, both of you, whether it's in the sales process or rolling out. Have you heard much about how, Blair, allowing them to get back to what they do best and coaching and everything like that? Yeah,
I think that's the goal. You referenced it earlier. You want to update a form, you're driving around all the sites, like replacing the form, things like that. Going digital, it cuts those kind of activities out of your day, right?
Yeah.
You're not going site to site, collecting forms or replacing forms, things like that. So it does free up your time to really focus on what truly matters, right? Which is, obviously making the site safer and just enforcing like a strong safety culture. So.
To me, it's talking to safety professionals. It's about prioritization. Right? There's only so many hours in the day, and they've only got so little time and so many potential sites that they're managing the safety and responsibility for. So, and the admin burden, like we talked about, it's not what they signed up for.
Yeah.
And so if we can ease that up by putting it all together, making it more connected in real time, then they're able to focus on what matters most and where to most importantly spend their time next.